Man, sometimes you think things are going to cool down, maybe get a little quiet,
Yeah.
and then bam, something pops up that just makes you go, hold on, what just happened?
Right.
And this whole thing, with this high-ranking FBI official just gone, like, out of nowhere.
Yeah, just poof, out of there.
Definitely one of those head-scratcher moments. So we're diving into this whole situation, the departure of James Dean. He was the assistant director in charge of the New York FBI field office. Big deal.
Big deal. And, to try to unpack this, we're going deep on, there's a YouTube video, a commentary by Glenn Kirshner. He's a former federal prosecutor. And he's laid out his whole take on what he thinks is going on here.
Okay, so we got Kirshner's breakdown, and our mission here, I guess, is to, cut through all the noise and get to what really matters in this story, right?
Exactly. Like what actually happened, who's saying what. And the big question, what does it all mean? We're giving you the cheat sheet to this whole unfolding saga.
Perfect love, a good cheat sheet.
Yeah.
So starting with the basics, what was the news? It was pretty blunt, wasn't it?
Yeah, straight to the point. CNN just comes out and says, James Dean forced to retire, quote unquote.
Wow, no messing around. And they even had a bit from an email he sent to his colleague, to the people he worked with.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's, he just says it flat out. Late Friday, I was informed that I needed to put my retirement papers in today, which I just did.
I mean, that just does not sound like someone who was, planning a nice, goodbye lunch or anything.
No, not at all. See you later, gotta go, And to make it even more, odd,
Yeah.
the very next line in the email, he says, I was not given a reason for this decision.
Okay, now that's strange. You're telling me a guy at that level, they just tell him to pack it up, retire right now, and they don't even tell him why.
Apparently. And that's what Kirshner seems to be pointing out. That just isn't normal, right? What's the protocol for someone like that to leave? Where's the explanation? It just seems off.
Yeah, there are definitely some missing pieces there. What's the context? And, this is where it gets even more complicated, I guess, because it turns out, get this, just a month before all of this.
Yeah.
Dean sends this super passionate message to his team, at the FBI. And this is right when there's all this talk about big job cuts, possible firings happening at the FBI.
So this message, this is before he gets the boot. This is crucial to understanding what might have led to this whole, forced retirement thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In this message, Dean talks about this, like a battle of our own, he calls it, happening inside the FBI. So there's some kind of internal struggle going on.
Internal battle.
Yeah.
Interesting. And what's he battling about?
Well, he says that, quote, good people are being walked out of the FBI, unquote. And he also says that some people, quote, are being targeted because they did their jobs in accordance with the law and FBI policy.
Whoa, that's a pretty strong statement, right?
It is. He's basically saying that something's wrong, that people are being pushed out unfairly.
Maybe for doing their jobs too well or something, being too by the book.
Exactly. And, to me, this just shows there was, some serious tension, disagreement, about what direction the FBI was heading in.
Yeah, a power struggle maybe? And to go from that to then being told to scram a month later, that's quite the turnaround.
It is, for sure. What could have happened in that month that made things go so sour so fast?
That's the million-dollar question. And this is where it gets even more interesting, or maybe messy, I guess. Because according to the source we're looking at, the official reason they gave for Dean's departure, it came from the Attorney General, Pam Bondi.
Pam Bondi, okay.
Yeah, and she's claiming, get this, that the New York FBI office, Dean's office, they were, quote, withholding thousands of pages of additional documents related to accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, wow. Now that's a bombshell.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah.
And she even sent a letter to the FBI director, Kash Patel, demanding an investigation into this whole thing.
Okay, now things are getting really tangled. We've got a serious accusation here from a high-profile person, and it's tied to this, super sensitive case, the Epstein case.
Right, and that's exactly where Kirshner, our source, he starts to get skeptical. He's not so quick to just accept what Bondi and Patel are saying.
And that's an important point, to think about, why are they saying this? They both have their own histories, their own connections. It's not like they're just neutral observers here.
Right, got to consider the source. So we're trying to be critical, not just take things at face value. And that's why I think Kirshner shifts the focus to Dean's own words. in this, what he calls Dean's letter of forced resignation.
Oh, interesting. So even though he was forced out, he still wrote a letter.
Yeah, and it's not just any letter. It's like he knew people were going to read this, and he chose his words very carefully.
Okay, so like a final statement. Almost.
Exactly. And he starts by saying he's sorry that he can't keep his promise to lead the New York office for longer. He wanted to stay for at least 2 years, he says.
So again, that just adds to the whole, like, this wasn't planned. He was pushed out.
Yeah, like, sorry, I got kicked out early, guys.
Yeah.
But then he shifts gears and starts talking about how proud he is of the people he worked with at the New York office. And he uses some really strong language to describe them.
What does he say?
He says they're committed to, quote, always do the right thing for the right reasons. And he says they, quote, always seek the truth while upholding the law.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. It's not just like empty words. It feels like he's talking about something deeper, about a real commitment to ethics.
Totally. And there's more. He says they, quote, always follow the facts no matter where they lead and be unapologetic about it.
Oh, wow. Unapologetic. Okay, so they don't back down from the truth, even if it's uncomfortable.
Exactly. And he keeps going. He says they will never bend, break, falter, or quit on your integrity.
Wow. Never bend, break, falter. That's like a warrior's creed, He's serious about this.
He is. Like, he's drawing a line in the sand. And then he talks about how carefully they handle cases and the evidence. And he says they do it, quote, for the innocent, the victims, and the process first.
Okay, the process first. That's interesting. What do you think he means by that?
Well, to me, it means he's saying it's not about getting a specific result, winning at all costs.
Yeah.
It's about doing things the right way, following the rules, making sure everything is fair.
Yeah, I see that. It's
like,
about respecting the system, even when it's hard.
Right, exactly. And then he says something that it really jumps out, especially given everything that's going on.
What's that?
He says they, quote, will always remain independent.
Oh, wow. Independent. Okay, so he's directly addressing the elephant in the room, the whole idea that maybe he was forced out because of some kind of political pressure.
Yeah, and he's not backing down. He's saying we do things our way. We don't let anyone tell us what to do.
That's a powerful statement, especially in this context.
For sure. And then after all that, after this whole declaration of principles, he does something kind of unexpected. He includes a top 10 list of things he's going to miss about the FBI.
A top 10 list?
Yeah.
Really? In his resignation letter?
Yeah, kind of strange choice, right? But Kirshner thinks this list actually tells us a lot about what Dean valued most about his job, and about the FBI itself.
Okay, I'm curious, what's on this list?
Well, he starts by talking about the investigations, the cases they work on. He calls them, quote, the best in the world, like top notch, nothing else like it.
Interesting. So he's really proud of the work they do.
Yeah, definitely. And then he talks about how important the work is, the high stakes involved and the meaning behind the FBI brand, like what that represents.
The weight of the badge, the responsibility that comes with it.
Right. And he mentions the camaraderie, the bonds he's formed with other agents, other law enforcement folks.
The brotherhood, the shared mission.
Exactly. And, he doesn't just focus on the serious stuff. He also talks about the variety of the job. One day you're in a suit, next day you're out in the field, maybe even doing SWAT stuff. It's the whole package.
So he appreciates the diverse nature of the work, the excitement, maybe even.
For sure. And of course, he brings up the badge again, how much it means to him. And guess what? He mentions independence again.
There it is again, independence, clearly a core value for him.
Definitely. And he talks about the impact of their work, how it affects everything from national security to local crime. It's far reaching.
Yeah, that makes sense. The FBI touches so many different aspects of our lives.
Right. It's not just about catching bad guys. It's about protecting the country, keeping people safe.
Exactly. And then, to wrap up his list, he gets personal. He says he's going to miss, quote, all of you, the people he worked with.
That's actually kind of sweet, shows that he really cares about the folks he worked with.
It does. It humanizes him.
Yeah.
He's not just this figurehead. He's a guy who built relationships, who values the people around him.
Exactly. And then we get to his closing remarks, and these are, well, let's just say they're memorable.
Okay, I'm ready. Hit me with it.
He says, quote, when you find yourself in a hole, sometimes it's best to quit digging. Screw that. I will never stop defending this joint. I'll just do it willingly and proudly from outside the wire. Sir Fidelis, JD.
Wow. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
First of all, that screw that. That just tells you how defiant he is. Like, he's not going quietly.
No, not at all. He's going out on his own terms. And Kirshner explains that whole Ser Fidelis JD thing.
Yeah, what's that all about?
So Ser Fidelis, it's a play on Semper Fidelis, which is like the motto of the Marine Corps, always faithful.
Ah, got it. And Dean was a Marine before the FBI, right?
Yeah, for 7 years. So he's kind of invoking that, his military background, his sense of duty, and the JD, that's just his initials.
Okay, so even though he's leaving, he's saying, I'm not abandoning my principles. I'm still going to fight for what I believe in.
Exactly. Like, he's not done. He's just changing his position, And when you put all of this together, Kirshner, our source, he comes to a pretty clear conclusion.
What's that?
He thinks that if the goal of pushing Bean out was to somehow, damage the FBI's integrity, make them less trustworthy, then the people who did this, he specifically names Trump, Bondi, and Patel, he thinks they totally underestimated the FBI.
They underestimated their commitment to doing what's right, their loyalty to the truth.
Exactly. Like, you can't just bully these guys into doing something shady. They're not going to stand for it. And Kirshner ends by saying, for the thousands of FBI agents out there, quote, justice matters.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, he's reminding us what's at stake here. It's not just about politics. It's about justice, about fairness, about doing the right thing.
Totally. So for you listening, the bottom line here is we've got this high-ranking FBI official suddenly gone, forced out, and there are all these different stories about why.
Right. We have the official explanation, the Epstein documents, but then we have Dean's warnings about internal problems, his emphasis on independence, and his whole defiant exit.
And it all just makes you wonder, what's really going on inside the FBI? What kind of pressures are they facing? It's not just about one guy losing his job. It's about the integrity of a whole institution.
It is, and it makes you think, how do we know what to believe? We've got all these different sides, different agendas. How do we figure out what's true?
Exactly, and that's what we want you to think about. In a world where everyone's got their own version of events, how do we find the truth, especially when it comes to something as important as justice? And what about the people inside these institutions? What do they do when they see something wrong, when they see their values being threatened? It's a tough situation, a lot to consider, and we're definitely going to keep an eye on this as it develops.
Absolutely. It's a story that's not going away anytime soon.
Nope, not by a long shot.
Stay tuned, folks.
That's the truth.